On this week's edition of the Loud Nerd in the Basement podcast, I go over the new Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer, Jason Momoa wanting an R-rated Lobo movie, James Gunn providing new details on the Jimmy Olsen show, including that Gorilla Grodd is in it, and Shang-Chi 2 still in the works after 5 years since the original. All this and more on the Loud Nerd in the Basement podcast. Well, welcome to another Friday News Roundup edition of the Loud Nerd in the Basement podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam Zolnai. Thank you so much for listening, however you may be listening. Remember, we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Substack, and YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, I'm going to be expanding what I do on the YouTube channel a little bit. I'm going to be releasing 2 to 4 shorts a week just to kind of keep engagement up and to have little extra segments that I may not be able to do here on the podcast or post on Spotify, post on Substack. So if you want to see those, just subscribe to the YouTube channel and you'll be able to get those every time they come out. I'm having a blast making them and they're really easy to do. And again, I just think fun little tidbits and another way for me to interact with you guys. But if you want to get the full experience of Loudner in the Basement, you can upgrade your subscription on my Substack from free to paid. It's $6 a month or $50 a year. And with that, you get a lot of extra perks. You get to submit questions that I will answer here on the podcast. I got a few today that are really good. You will get spoiler articles for major movies. I have one coming out on Disclosure Day that will be on the Substack on Monday, so if you are a paid subscriber, you'll get access to that. I go into all the spoilery details of that movie, of which there are many, so I can talk about those freely. You can hear my full thoughts on a movie that I can't talk about in my initial reviews. And then you also get to read the monthly rewind reviews. So I had one for Superman that I did a couple weeks ago that is up now for any paid subscribers to read. You can request movies for me to review in the future. I have one that was requested that I'll be doing for next month soon. So if you want to be able to request those and read those, just upgrade your subscription. Any little bit helps. It helps me continue to do what I love doing, which is this, writing about movies, talking about movies, all the nerdy stuff that comes with that. I love being able to do it, and I'm so grateful for your support. I really mean that. This is awesome that I get to do this, and I'm glad that you guys enjoy listening to me, because I love doing it, but it wouldn't be anything without you guys, so I really appreciate that. But enough of the sappiness, let's get on to the news, shall we? So obviously, next week we got DC's Supergirl coming out, and a big character in that is going to be Lobo, played by Jason Momoa, who was born for the character. I'm so glad that he acknowledges that and wants to do that, because he looks and sounds like the part, and I'm sure again he'll be a scene stealer in the movie. But we'll find out next week when I go see it. But talking about it while on the promotion for it, he said, and I quote, "It's all I want, and I promise I do not have any interest in making a PG-13 Lobo movie. Will he be a part of some other movies? If they want me, I'll be there. But if I make a solo movie, I'm not doing it unless it's rated R." That makes sense for a Lobo film, a solo film. For those of you who don't know who Lobo is, he's basically almost like DC's Deadpool a little bit, where he doesn't break the fourth wall, but he can't get killed. The whole thing is that his species can't really die, although, or it's hard to kill him, I should say, because the backstory for Lobo is that he's the last surviving member of his species because he killed the rest. So that tells you how bad he is. And he's a bounty hunter in space. He's very foul-mouthed. He just has no manners whatsoever. He's very violent and obscene when he wants to be. And again, he can take a lot of punishment. So it makes sense that if they were going to do a Lobo movie, that it would be rated R. As far as if I want to see that, I mean, for me personally, I'm not the biggest Lobo fan. Like, I don't mind it when he shows up in people's comics. It's always fun when like he shows up in a Superman comic or a Green Lantern comic, or even when he interacts briefly with Batman. It's hilarious, just because again the comedic beats write themselves whenever he's interacting with somebody. So I don't mind it. I don't know if I would want to see if it's an R-rated Lobo movie, that makes sense. I wouldn't want it more than like an hour 45 minutes at the longest. I don't think you need a 2.5 hour R-rated Lobo movie. And we've seen that R-rated comic book films can work. Obviously, Deadpool, Logan, all of those, Suicide Squad to a lesser extent, Joker. There is room now for that kind of stuff. I mean, the Lantern show seems to be pushing kind of an R rating, especially with the language for some reason. Um, so it again, there's no short of precedent for this kind of thing. So I think you could do it to where you can kind of do a movie like that on the cheap. And we know that James Gunn's DC universe is not shy about making films with varying degrees of budget and rating and tone. So I think down the line, especially I think if he really stands out in the movie and a lot of people like him, I could definitely see a future where maybe 2 or 3 years down the line we get a Lobo movie announced. I'm sure he's pushing for it, and again, if it's something where people really respond to his version of the character, I could see them doing that down the line. Although again, like I've said before, I'd rather that they prioritize Wonder Woman and Batman first because, again, I don't want us waiting almost 10 years before we get a Justice League movie. That would be a really frustrating if we didn't get some sort of Justice League movie until like 2035 or 2036. I would really not like that, but first I would like to see them get their versions of Wonder Woman and Batman out before we get to that point. I'm not saying it does need to be Avengers where, we need every single individual Justice League member get their own movie before we get to a Justice League film, but I do think you should probably at least have a Batman and Wonder Woman established before you drop them into a Justice League movie, even if it's just a cameo. Like if they were just to have like a Batman cameo at the end of Man of Tomorrow next year, I think that would be enough for me to then be like, okay, I don't need to see him again until Justice League. As long as Justice League is not 10 years away, which just because of the Batman situation, like I've talked about before, it's just that is a logistical nightmare I do not envy James Gunn having to deal with. So more power to him. I hope that can get resolved and we were able to get a built out DC universe sooner rather than later. Because again, I don't mind that they're doing mostly Superman stuff for the first couple years. He's the center of the DC universe. As much as Batman is the more popular one, I do think the heart of the DC universe is Superman, and so building out uh his supporting cast and his array of characters first and having kind of the DC universe spread out through him, I think is a smart idea. It's a great idea, but at some point, I think you do need to have a Wonder Woman and Batman established sooner rather than later. They're just too big, especially Batman, just too big of a character to leave on the sidelines for too long. So we'll see how that goes. But speaking of expanding the DC universe, James Gunn is talking about the Jimmy Olsen HBO series. Obviously, this was announced almost immediately after the Superman movie came out in theaters, and that's fine because I love that version of Jimmy Olsen. He's really well done, and it's very accurate to the comics. But surprisingly, uh, James Gunn has clarified that the upcoming HBO TV show series is going to be, quote, both a Jimmy Olsen and Gorilla Grodd show, and it's one of my favorite projects and will be filming soon. That is interesting. An interesting pairing. Now, there is precedent in comics for Jimmy Olsen just to have wacky adventures without Superman. Like the whole kind of inside joke of Jimmy Olsen in the comics is that this dude just lives an extraordinary life and he's just an ordinary person. It's just he's kind of thrown through these crazy scenarios, and interacting with Gorilla Grodd would not be the craziest thing. It's just it's an interesting way to introduce Gorilla Grodd as a character. And according to Variety, it looks like it would be a true crime docuseries presented by Jimmy Olsen. The first season would focus on Gorilla Grodd. Uh, but apparently it's not been that's not officially confirmed. That's just what Variety is reporting, but they also usually don't report rumors without some sort of evidence. So that'd be kind of an interesting way to expand the DC universe, where you have Jimmy Olsen kind of doing a documentary style series on different DCU villains to, again, kind of spread out the universe. And maybe you get like that's when you can cast the Flash and have like a Flash cameo with him stopping Gorilla Grodd at the end and then being like, "Oh hey, nice to meet you. Love your podcast or whatever." And he zooms off at Jimmy Olsen and goes, "Wow, got the Flash on here." Like that would be kind of interesting. Like maybe the first season's Gorilla Grodd, the next season, I don't know. Maybe this would be a little crazy, but maybe do like Court of Owls, and then Batman shows him like, "Hey, I need you to stop investigating this kid, please. I know you're friends with Soups, but I don't want to have to babysit you the way he does." Or again, oh man, there's so many different villains you can do. The Riddler, maybe not the Batman's version of the Riddler, a little bit softer version of that character. I mean, there's just the possibilities are endless. So if that's how they want to do it, that's again a clever way to kind of build out the DC universe, kind of get some new villains in there, maybe ones that where it's like, okay, I mean, Gorilla Grodd I think could make a good villain for a Flash movie, but maybe some of the lesser villains that you don't maybe can't sustain a movie, but would be fun to have little tidbits as little um tidbits at a TV show. I think that's a clever idea. Again, I'd have to see it before I fully say like, yeah, let's do this. This is a great pairing. But overall, I like this idea. And again, I just like the idea of a Jimmy Olsen show. It writes itself. You can kind of really expand on the whole Daily Planet cast, which was so well cast and felt straight out of the comics in the movie. And obviously, the movie's about Superman and not them, so you can only have so many film minutes devoted to their characters and their lives, so to speak. So I'm happy that you can kind of use this as a way to take advantage of those castings and really expand that kind of world. And I do not doubt that we will have a Clark Kent cameo where Dave Cornsweat will show up and be like, "Hey Jimmy, what you doing? What you doing out there? Oh, you're investigating Gorilla Grodd. You better be careful. I mean, if you need to, I'm sure Superman will save you, but maybe you just watch yourself," kind of a thing. Like, I'm sure we'll get something fun like that because, of course, and especially because Dave Cornsweat seems to be down for just like, yeah, I'll be Superman in anything. I mean, he's appearing in the Supergirl movie. We already seen that in the trailers and clips they've released. He's gonna be Man of Tomorrow. Heck, maybe we even get a cameo of him in Lanterns at the end, where he shows up to John Stewart and be like, "Hey, you know, you seem much nicer than the other Green Lantern I know. Let's talk." Or something like that. Again, the possibilities are endless, and it just seems James Gunn it wants to have some of those kind of fun cameos. Like, we had Lex Luthor in Peacemaker season 2, which was fun. Um, and the nice thing is again, you can, because of the way these schedules usually pan out, you're able to kind of have actors quickly jump off from one set to another and film their cameo real quick. Like, I know the Lex Luthor cameo in Peacemaker season 2 was filmed while they were doing Superman, so it was just one of those, okay, let's just get you in a orange jumpsuit real quick, and then you can film your scene talking to Rick Flag Sr., and then boom, we got our cameo filled. So I think there's many possibilities of how they can do this. And again, I think this would be a good way to again slowly expand the DCU in new and interesting directions, while not feeling like you need to fill up your slate with 5 movies and 5 TV shows to quickly pump out a universe. So really, really clever idea and way to do it. I'm excited to see how that unfolds. But moving on from DC to Marvel, Spider-Man, brand new day, got a new trailer. Looks great. Continues to not give us a lot of answers and reveal too much about the plot, which I really appreciate. This has been an annoyance for me from Sony for a long time. I remember the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 trailers where you had literally 10 minutes of trailers where they would just release like half the movie. It was the most insecure marketing campaigns I've ever seen, where you basically got like a brief short film version of the movie, and you knew everything going into it. There was not that many surprises. Like, we knew Gwen Stacy was going to die because she's in the Death of Gwen Stacy outfit. We literally see her fight. We see Spider-Man fighting a goblin and her falling off a clock tower, and it's like, huh, I wonder what that's going to be all about. So I'm really thankful that with this marketing campaign, and really all the Spider-Man MCU movies, the marketing campaigns have been good and not revealing too much about the plot, and really leaving a lot for when we get to the theater. And it's the same way here. Builds off a lot of the first trailer. We see Peter dealing with his body kind of mutating, as they describe it. He's getting organic webbing. He's getting stronger. He's losing control of his self and his powers. A lot of people are speculating Man Spider, which would be interesting. Again, as long as we don't get into the other storyline. I do not need a Spider God showing up and being like, "You have been chosen, Peter Parker." Um, we get a little bit more of his relationship with Frank, which is very much like Spider-Man in the comics. It's the relationship that the Punisher has with all the street level heroes of Marvel, where it's just like, yeah, we tolerate you, we don't really like you, and he doesn't really like them. But in a pinch, he's like, I still respect what you're doing, even if you're not going as far as I'd like you. Let me help you out. We see some glimpses of Sadie Sink, but again, they haven't told us who she is. It's implied that somebody's attacking New York psychically. We see them unleash the Hulk. Banner has kind of put the Hulk back in the box, so to speak, with a device on his arm, and obviously that gets taken off, and so we get Savage Hulk again, and he looks cool, looks awesome. We're gonna get to see Spider-Man versus the Hulk, which is always a fun time in the comics. That's a fight that happens early on. I think it's in the first Spider-Man annual where that happens. Then Spider-Man does beat him, but then ultimately lets him go because he feels sorry for the Hulk, and so that'll be fun to see on screen. It's implied that the villain, whoever the psychic villain is, knows Spider-Man and knows who Spider-Man is. A lot of people are speculating that Sadie Sink is going to be Jean Grey. Again, I hope not, for a few reasons. One, I mean, Jean Grey, the only time that she's a villain is when she becomes the Phoenix. I don't think they're going to be starting out with the Phoenix in the MCU. That'd be really dumb on their part. And again, it'd be weird to be her to become the Phoenix and then be like, I'm going to focus all my attention on Spider-Man of all characters. Like, that doesn't make much sense to me from a character or story perspective. And again, I just don't want them trying to introduce new X-Men characters when we know we're doing a soft reboot of the universe. And like, again, I don't want Spider-Man being a backdoor pilot to the X-Men that are coming. It's just, I don't like it. Thematically, it works again, but again, Spider-Man's not a mutant. He's never been a mutant. He shouldn't be a mutant. I hope they don't make him a mutant. So that's my biggest thing, is I just don't want her to be Jean Grey, but I also don't know who she could be, just because of how much they're keeping it a secret. So it's obviously a big character that we know from the comics, but I just can't think of who she could be playing that would warrant this level of secrecy. Like, again, I think that the person that's bouncing around is Mr. Negative, because I believe we know he's in the movie. He's been cast. So I think that It's going to be Mr. Negative. It's going to plus having Jean Grey and mutants kind of takes away some of the street levelness of what they're, which is what they're going for in this movie. So to have mutants show up in a big, Phoenix level threat showing up really takes away the street level feel of the movie that they're going for. But overall, this looks like it's going to be the best Spider-Man movie yet. Tom Holland's talked about how it's going to be like they tried to make it the best Spider-Man movie. I love the way the action looks. A lot of comic book looking shots, which I love. They're really just letting Spider-Man's powers be fully unleashed in here, and I love that. Um, the action looks like it's going to be very unique and something we haven't seen in a lot of Spider-Man movies. So I'm really, really excited about that. Really, overall, I can't wait. I'm really excited for this. Again, my only two concerns are really is how they're going to handle the whole evolving situation because I just don't like that storyline in the comics. But they also did One Moment in Time in Spider-Man No Way Home, which is another horrible storyline in the comics. So, and I liked how they used that storyline in No Way Home. So, if they can take stuff from the other and make it better in this movie, I'm all for that. But if a Spider God shows up, I'm out. I'm gonna throw my hands up in the theater and be like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Sony gonna Sony, I guess. But I'm very intrigued to see how this all plays out. There's a lot of rumors going on with some of the test screenings, but I never take into account test screenings because the cut that is shown in the test screenings is always different from what we see in the theaters when it's actually released. I mean, Project Hail Mary that came out this year had like 11 test screenings. So the amount of test screenings and what comes out of those doesn't mean anything. It's just the studio trying to nail down the cut that they want. And it's kind of like a book. You have to show it to some other people to kind of get feedback because you're too close to the project. So we'll see. I'm excited. It's going to be good. Comes out the end of next month, and you better believe I'm going to be there opening weekend. Going to have a spoiler-free review and a spoiler-filled review. It's going to be awesome. But moving on to our other piece of Marvel related news, Dustin Crichton is directing Spider-Man: Brand New Day, and he talked about another movie that he made, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and how there is still a sequel for that in development. He said, and I quote, "We are working on it. The first film's reception was incredible, and we want to honor that. It's evolving in a way that we are excited about." This is interesting because there had been talks a while back when Shang-Chi first came out that there was going to be a sequel. Obviously, that movie implies some stuff with the Ten Rings, but apparently that stuff is going to be taken care of and addressed in the Vision Quest show coming out in October. And obviously, Shang-Chi is going to be in Avengers Doomsday. We know that. I wonder if part of the reason for the delay is, again, Marvel is still trying to figure out what they're going to do after Secret Wars. Like, once all that's wrapped up and they reboot the universe and whatever that looks like, and maybe, again, Marvel Studios doesn't even know what that reboot is going to look like because Secret Wars is going to start filming in August, so they might still be kind of hashing out what that film does to the MCU as a whole right now as we speak. So I wonder if maybe that's what he means by evolving is like, hey, we have to take in consideration what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to look like after Secret Wars. So it might be something where again, Shang-Chi's played by the same actor, but it's a whole different universe, whole different timeline that he's going to be interacting with. So it might be one of those things where, hey, some of the stuff in the first movie did happen, but here we're going to pick and choose where he lines up in the timeline now. Plus, we know that they're going hard with mutants in the first phase of the new MCU, so I'm sure they're also going to try and figure out where Shang-Chi kind of slots in. So I'm sure we'll see him in something because I enjoyed most of that movie. I didn't like how it became kind of a kaiju fight at the end, but I enjoyed a lot of the kung fu and action aspects of it, and even like starting Shang-Chi from a darker place than we've gotten with a lot of MCU heroes, where it's like, I was raised to be basically a child assassin by my dad, who's a supervillain. Like, there's a lot of unique aspects to his character that we hadn't really seen before that I really enjoyed. And I think also part of it is, too, is Shang-Chi is just one of those characters that doesn't have a lot of comic book history to draw from. He hasn't had a lot of solo books, and most of the time he just shows up in other characters' books and kind of helps out and then pieces out. Like, the only way I knew about him before I saw the movie was from Spider-Man comics. Like, there's a run in Dan Slott's Spider-Man comics where Spider-Man loses his spider sense after a battle, and he's like, "Oh crap! I never really learned how to fight because I just relied on my spider sense to help me dodge attacks before they come and roll with punches and stuff. So, I never really learned how to actually like counter, attacks and stuff. So I don't really know how to fight." So he goes to Shang-Chi, who teaches him some some moves on how to be like, "Okay, if a guy comes at you like this, like here's how you dodge it and everything." And kind of how to incorporate his spider reflexes and powers with an actual fighting style. It's really interesting and unique. And then in another version I saw was in Brian Michael Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man, where he and Iron Fist, Shang-Chi and Iron Fist, are kind of friends, and I think it's implied that they like train together at Kunlun. So that's was my exposure to Shang-Chi. So I wonder if part of the reason also it's taking a long time is that there's not a lot of stories to draw from with this character. So they're having to kind of develop the story more whole cloth out of nothing. And so I wonder if that's another reason. It's just the MCU, they don't know how it's going to look after Secret Wars, and you don't have a lot of material to draw from, so it's more of an original story than what you're used to, or the stories that you are going through are very obscure, and so you're having to really look and see, okay, what can we take from this and make uh into a movie. So I imagine that's why there's been delays. Plus, again, obviously Crichton's been working on, or Cretin. I'm sorry, I might be mispronouncing that. Uh, he's been working obviously on Spider-Man. He was originally tasked to do Kang Dynasty before it changed and turned into Doomsday. So he was involved in a lot of other Marvel stuff beyond Shang-Chi too. So I'm sure that is a cause for delay. But I mean, I'd be interested in seeing more. Again, I didn't mind Shang-Chi at all. I thought it was a really fun movie with some flaws, but again, I think it's just going to be a matter of where does he fit in the MCU going forward. I don't want him to force a character into a spot where if it really feels like they're making a movie just for the sake of a movie rather than actually having a story to tell. But that's all we have for the Marvel news. But before we get out of the news section, we have a little fun piece of Star Wars news. So obviously we know before George Lucas sold Star Wars to and Lucasfilm to Disney that he had tried to get a Star Wars live action TV show off the ground. It was called Star Wars Underworld, but it was ultimately canceled because it was just too expensive at the time to make, because it would cost like $40 million per episode, which, I mean, Disney's already kind of spent that much money on most of their Disney Plus shows anyways, but that's beside the point. Disney can also, I think, afford it a lot more. Even then, they're cutting back on the TV shows because of the amount of money it costs. But E. McDermott talked about of a scrap TV show that George Lucas pitched to them. He said, and I quote, he was talking about, I think I can tell you now, a TV series. At the time, we didn't think about Star Wars in terms of a television series. It was, that's not a quote. Here we go. We had lunch one day, and he said, "I've got this idea, and I hope you might want to get involved. We could sort of follow the Emperor's progress like Hitler's, some of that. There might be an assassination attempt, and of course it wouldn't succeed." It sounded really exciting, and he also said that maybe you could direct one, and then I fainted. But sadly, that didn't come to pass. And a lot of people are speculating that that might have been what Star Wars Underworld was going to cover, was kind of the rise of the Empire, rise of the Emperor's dominance between episodes 3 and 4. And it sounds interesting. I think it would have been cool. And again, I think that would have cost a lot, especially because it being on Coruscant. I mean, I guess maybe you could just reuse assets from the films, but even then, you know, you would still have to create new CG for any new shots that come out. And again, I don't know if Lucas was the best equipped to write such a show. Again, just based on the writing of his prequels, maybe hand that off to someone else. I mean, and then ultimately in the end, we got a lot of this in other shows, thankfully. Bad Batch, the animated series, kind of showed the Empire slowly phasing out the Republic, where it was, hey, we're phasing out the clone troopers and we're going to bring in stormtroopers, where we can script people from other planets to kind of keep them tied to us, where it's like, hey, we have some of your people working for us. You don't want to shoot Bob from down the street now that he's a stormtrooper, do you? Um, Obviously Andor was a huge part of that, just showing the rise of the rebellion, um, and kind of what life was like under the Empire when it was at its full might, and what they were doing there. Um, Rebels is another one of just showing us what the Empire was like before A New Hope. So we've gotten little bits and little bits and glimpses of that. A part of this would be cool to see still. I mean, Disney could do it and maybe just make it an animated show, because Ian McDiarmid has shown that he's down for anything Star Wars. He seems to love playing that character and is willing to do a voice, willing to cameo in Obi-Wan. So it'd be down. So maybe you could still do something like that. I don't know again if you could do a live action now because of the cost. It would still be there, but I mean, you could do that, although at the same time, it would be nice to get out of that era. We just have so many projects that capture what went on between episodes 3 and 4, and most of them pretty good. So I'm not complaining about the quality. It's just I wouldn't mind seeing us move on to something different. We've told so many stories in that era. I wouldn't mind us being able to move on to a different time period in Star Wars. And I think that's where Disney's headed. Obviously, we've got Ahsoka season 2 coming out next year, which takes place after Return of the Jedi and before Force Awakens. We've got Starfire, which takes place after Rise of Skywalker. So they're already kind of pushing into new eras to tell stories. So I honestly think, I mean, Mandalorian and Grogu takes place after Return of the Jedi. So you're already kind of seeing them move out of that time period in Star Wars into some new areas, and for that, I think it's for the best. But that's all the news I had for this week. So on to paid subscriber questions, and we got a few in here that are really good. Thank you for sending those questions in. And again, if you want to submit your own, all you have to do is upgrade your subscription for the cost of 1 cup of coffee a month, or less than what you would pay for in a streaming subscription. So if you want to do that, just go over to Substack and click upgrade, the upgrade button if you are already subscribed. If not, then click on the subscribe button and it'll give you the option of whether you want to do paid or unpaid. And you'll be able to walk through the steps to get to that paid tier. So thank you so much. But let's get into the subscriber questions. The first one is kind of a two-parter, so I'll answer them individually. The first part is, Netflix just dropped the first look at Scooby-Doo Origins and confirmed they are using a real puppy instead of CGI. As a Dane owner, my brain immediately broke. These giant dogs literally double in size overnight. If filming takes months, are they rotating look-alike puppies every single week to keep it believable, or are they going to cheap out and use bad AI to shrink him? So that's a really good question, and for those of you who don't know, Scooby-Doo Origins is a Netflix live-action TV show where they're going to show the origins of the Mystery Inc. gang again. I think this is like the second or third iteration of that. And again, like the question says, they are using a real puppy to play Scooby Doo. My guess is that they will use some CGI for certain scenes, especially if they get to the point where he starts talking like he does in the original cartoons. Um, so my guess is, because I know a lot of movies do this with animals, where they will use real life animals for some scenes where it's like, okay, we don't need them to do anything crazy. They just need to basically sit in someone's lap or walk around like a normal dog. Uh, and then for something more outlandish stuff, they use CGI and they use the real life puppy as reference. So that's my guess as to what's going to go on here is they'll use whatever the puppy for whatever shots they can for whatever shots can use a real life dog and then CGI the rest of it and then use the puppy as the CG as the basis for the CG model. So that would be my guess. And so I would imagine that the puppy that they use, the actual real life puppy, my guess will be on set for maybe a week or two. So maybe I'm sure they have a couple of puppies that they will use. They usually have like two or three, from my understanding. So I don't think it's going to be just one dog. That would be my guess on that part of the question. But the second part says, but beyond the visual mess, I have another concern. Whenever Hollywood makes a movie with a cute animal, people rush out to buy that specific breed. Great Danes turn into horse-sized financial commitments with massive specific needs. From media critic standpoint, do you think Hollywood has a responsibility to consider the real world impact of their casting, or should audiences know better? I'm excited for the show, but terrified Netflix is going to ruin the character and trigger a wave of accidental giant dog surrenders. What's your take? As far as the Netflix show, I'm skeptical just because I'm worried Netflix is going to kind of Riverdale it and make it a dark and gritty version of like, oh, the mystery gang. They're investigating a guy that's pretending to be a ghost who's actually a psycho murderer or something, or it turns out to be real ghosts and monsters and stuff. And that'd be my only concern. So I'm taking a wait and see approach on the actual show. As far as the Hollywood having a responsibility, I'm of two minds about this. I think in the end, audiences have their own autonomy and are responsible for their own actions. I do think Hollywood has to acknowledge that they have some influence over the way people think, obviously. Uh, they can subliminally put the message in their mind of like, oh, it'd be cool to have a Great Dane puppy like Scooby-Doo, but obviously it's up to the audience to know the responsibilities that come with such a purchase. And sometimes that kind of thing can lead to good things, like for James Gunn's Superman, Crypto was based on his dog that he rescued. And so a lot of the experiences that Superman has in that movie with Crypto were based on experiences that James Gunn had with his dog. And as a result, a lot of people want to adopt rescue pets, which I think is a cool thing and a cool outcome. And, obviously there's a positive and negative that can happen. But in the end, I really am weary to say that Hollywood is solely responsible for the actions that people do, or that they are culpable for whatever bad things might happen. I mean, it's the same thing same issue that I have with people that try to blame movies and video games for people being violent. It's like, no, in the end, you cannot blame a movie or a game for what some crazy person decided to do. Like the guy who did that horrible tragedy in Aurora, Colorado during The Dark Knight Rises, where he dressed up as the Joker and shot up a theater. That's not on the movie. That is the sole actions of a crazed adult who needed people around him to take better care of him and to realize what he was doing. I do not think that is the movie's responsibility. And again, I've watched a bunch of violent movies. I play Call of Duty. I've all the violent video games, and I mean, I have no desire to inflict any violence on anyone. So, uh, just like me playing Madden does not automatically make me a Hall of Fame level quarterback. despite how I may play it. It's one of those things where in the end I think people are culpable, and now Hollywood should realize that there is going to be some people that might get subliminally nudged to want to adopt a dog, and they'll maybe put a little thing in the after credits saying, "Hey, FYI, Great Danes are a big responsibility. If you're going to buy one because you like what you saw in this show, that's fine. Just know what you're getting into." But in the end, adults need to be are responsible for their own decisions. So that's kind of where I fall on is where it's like, yeah, they can understand the impact, but they also shouldn't be held to account for what an adult does. They can think on their own. But thank you for that awesome question. That was a really good one. Our other question that we have for today is, which cult film truly lives up to its hype and reputation, not just because you like it? This one was a really good question. I thought about it because it's hard for what you would classify as a cult film. I would call one a cult film any film that maybe didn't do well at the box office but has a really big following, and has a lot of people clamoring for like sequels or just any news on it, or just constantly talk about it with the actors whenever they're being interviewed. And for this one, I chose Dread 2012 with Carl Urban. One, I do think it's a good movie. For me, the best way I would describe it as is an 80s action movie, but with more modern filmmaking sensibilities, where it knows what it is. It's over the top violent. It's very stylized. It's not ashamed of its source material, but it also kind of has that very 80s action guy vibe where it's like Judge Dredd. Always, Carl Urban always keeps the uh, helmet on, never takes it off, is very gruff with his answers. Again, the villains and henchmen feel very much out of the 80s, which is what the comic is from. But it also just is a really great movie. Really enjoyable watch if you're into like really great, goofy, over the top action movies. It really nails it and really sells the tone. And it's just a good adaptation of that source material based on the limited knowledge that I have of that material. So that's my choice. Dread 2012. It's one of those movies that I think is very much has a cult following. I know Carl Urban talks about it every time someone asks him about it, and talks about how much he would love to do another one, how much he enjoyed doing that one. So that is my choice for that answer. So thank you for the questions. And again, upgrade your subscription if you want to be able to submit your own. I'd love to be able to answer more questions. Before we get out here, what I'm watching, I'm continuing to go through Last of Us Season 1 with my wife. Our 2 episodes are being done. So for those of you who played the game and or watched the show, you know that we are getting to the as crazy and twisty as the show has been for her already. We are coming up on the end all be all of twists and just things that people constantly talk about literally a decade afterwards. The ending of that show and it adapts the ending of the game very well, is something that is constantly debated, and so I'm really excited to see what she thinks about it. I have an idea of where she will fall on it, but I'm really excited to see her experience it for herself. Obviously, I just watched Steven Spielberg's newest film, Disclosure Day. I have a spoiler-free review of that up on the Substack right now, and I will be putting out a spoiler-filled article on it where I go into all my spoiler-filled thoughts on it in the article for paid subscribers. So if you want to read that, upgrade your paid subscription. Very interesting movie. Not all what I expected. Some of that good, some of that bad. Very polarizing movie I'm seeing online, but I'm also seeing it kind of teeter towards people being underwhelmed, and I kind of fall into that category. Uh, I will be seeing Toy Story 5 this weekend, and so I will have a review of that up on the Substack next week. No, obviously no spoiler-filled article, just spoiler-free or spoiler light. I mean, it's Toy Story 5. There's not going to be much that I could spoil, but if there's any big twists, I will not say it. I'm really interested in that just because as a parent, seeing kind of them addressed head on the fact that toys are so much more technologically based now than they were even 15 years ago. You know, kids nowadays, at the age of 5, instead of playing with action figures, a lot of them play with tablets or literal iPads and stuff like that. And I really think them kind of addressing that head on is could make for a really compelling plot. And so I'm excited about that. So be on the lookout for that. But like I say before, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to start seeing some of those shorts that I'm putting up there. I'll put out 2 to 4 a week, just depending on what I feel like talking about and what there is to talk about. It'll probably lean more towards the 4 a week, but we'll just have to wait and see. Um, Once I get going, how I plan my schedule out, and again what I want to talk about with that. It'll be an ever evolving thing, but you'll get to see my face and hear my more of my lovely voice. And of course, subscribe to the Substack if you haven't. As always, I appreciate your support and you're listening to this. I love getting to do this. I'm so glad you enjoy listening, and I will see you guys next week with more news. Bye.